Welcome to Trusted Tech Talks podcast. This week, we're going to be covering a topic that's become just more and more prevalent. Some clients are saying they want a front end or a back end developer that specialize in one specific area. And some other smaller business, more SME companies prefer having a full stack developer in their team. Now, this has led us asking more people like, does a full stack developer really exist? So to get some opinions from experts, we've got Anthony with us today to educate us a little bit further on his view. How are we doing, Anthony? You doing okay?
Hi. Thank you for having me. Yes, I'm doing really well. Thank you.
No problem at all.
How about you?
Yeah, very well. I was just saying to my colleague, these days are absolutely flying by. Yeah, things are just going like quicker than ever. It's crazy that we're nearly into the 6th month, halfway through the year.
I know, same for me. Yeah, I guess time flies when you're busy, right?
Yeah, for sure.
When you're having fun as well.
Well, yeah, I wouldn't change it for the world, but
Yeah.
but yeah, Anthony, before we jump into the discussion, just give us a bit of an overview on your experience, where you're working at the moment, and what you do within the company.
Great. Yeah. Happy to do that. So, so hi everyone. My name is Anthony Karapetrides. I'm a tech. What's my official title? Hold on. My title is a staff software engineer according to the US, kind of role descriptions. Um, what you would call this in the UK is probably like a dev team lead, pretty much.
Got you.
So I'm working at a company called TruePill. TruePill was a company that started in the US, and it was a Silicon Valley startup. Now we've reached a point where we're a scale up, pretty much. They started in Silicon Valley about 4 years ago, approximately, and they came to the UK about 2 years ago or so. So they have an office established in Manchester. The core purpose of the company is to, as per their motto and their tagline, is to revolutionize healthcare by offering these interconnected healthcare APIs that any of our clients can integrate with and offer pharmaceutical services to their own clients. So because we're a licensed pharmacy both in the US and the UK, we can we have clients that are small or medium enterprises, and they can offer, or we even have large corporations that are our clients in the US actually, and they can integrate with our APIs and offer pharmaceutical services to their own clients, filling prescriptions, dispatch, fulfillment, renewals of prescriptions, all dispensing medications, all of those services. So that's what we do. I am, like I told you, a staff software engineer. So I'm currently leading a group of about, I'm kind of, I'm leading a group of about 10 software engineers. And they're split into subgroups, but I'm kind of supervising both of them. And we're working on this really, really big project that's really exciting right now. And yeah, I think it pretty much covers it. We've we're meant to go live with this really big customer in the US at the end of June. So you can imagine that right now we're kind of trying to make sure that everything is working properly. We're entering UAT testing next week, so it's a bit of a rush, let's say, right now.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate having you actually on the call, taking a bit of time out. So no, I do appreciate that. Fine, you've been with TruePill, is it coming up to 8-9 months now?
So yeah, I joined in October. So that's about 7-8 months or so. I joined back in October, and even though it seems like it's relatively a short amount of time, there's a lot that I've got the chance to work on, and got my hands dirty from the very beginning. So that's been really good.
Yeah.
I guess it's probably worth mentioning that before I joined TruePill, I was part of the BBC. I was working on with voice platforms. I was part of the voice and AI department. And then prior to that, I was part of the Sage group, So I was working on one of their web applications for cloud accounting software. And prior to that, I'll just last thing I promise. I was working in a consultancy, so I have some consulting, let's say, experience as a software engineer, obviously. But I had a glimpse of, not a glimpse. It was a 5-year period that I worked there for. So I really got an understanding of what it's like to have multiple clients working on different projects, changing projects frequently, and having multiple things going on at the same time.
Mhm.
So yeah, I think that has kind of like influenced my opinion on what we're talking about today. So that's why I brought it up.
Do you know what, this is slightly off topic, and because and you might be able to help me out because you've got an experience of working in consultancies and in-house. Now, whenever I look at working at a consultancy, all I see is you work on a couple of project for maybe 6-12 months, and then you move on to the next one, and you don't really see that particular business or project flourish or a particular product.
Mm-hmm.
I always wonder, what is the main motivator to work in a consultancy, apart from sometimes like Infinity Works, they pay ridiculously high salaries, and
Yeah.
that's always nice. But yeah, what was the kind of motivation for you, I suppose?
For me, it was, I guess that the benefit for me was, um, so yeah, this is always going to be my perspective, right? And I can't speak on behalf of anyone else. But when
Yeah.
that was my first job after university that I joined this consultancy. Um, and at that time, my my I was kind of I was still young. My outlook on what I want to do, I was very eager and excited to get involved in things. And
Mhm.
I also was very sentimental about this, and I wanted, for me at that point, I had a choice. Actually, this is like a pretty cool, cute, well, interesting anecdote, I think. I had a choice at that point to join this consulting that I joined, which was it was a small company. Like it wasn't anything massive like Infinity Works or Accenture or anything like that.
Yeah.
It was a small consultancy based in Newcastle. They're called Transcended. They're a fantastic, fantastic company. And it was about, at the time when I joined, and I think now their numbers haven't changed much. There was about 25 people or so working in total, including support directors, support engineers, and software engineers.
Yeah.
So a very small company we're talking here. But I was, when I joined them, I was torn between, I had an offer from Hewlett Packard and I had an offer
Oh yeah.
from them. And I was like, I felt more like it was a more warm environment for me to join Transcended.
Mhm.
And so I felt like I would be in a more comfortable environment where would learn things and feel comfortable there, and everyone was like it was a very family like setting. So I went for that. Now the benefit that I found working there was, like I said, being fresh out of university, I wanted to get that sort of experience. I wanted to be somewhere where I felt very comfortable, and I wouldn't feel, competition, if you want to put it that way, or I don't know, like, but that was my mind back then. I wasn't very, I guess, I wanted to feel comfortable. That's the short version of my answer.
Mhm. Yeah.
But what I did find, though, which was the benefit of working at a small company like that, was that we had long-term clients. So that example that you mentioned about being on a project for 12 months and then shifting every 12 months or every 8, 9 months or whatever, I didn't experience that, which was great.
Mhm.
So we had new projects coming in, and I would be involved. Obviously, like I said, being a small company, there weren't that the roles weren't that strict. So um, I was involved in, like, designing architecture of systems. I was also designing and implementing those. I was also involved in project managing those things. And, we had an in-house designer that would help us design some of these UI interfaces, but I was also sometimes involved in, making some design tweaks and stuff like that. So I was wearing multiple hats, and that was, it really helped me gain lots of knowledge across multiple domains, and put my skills into use. Um, but the benefit, like I said before, was that when a new project came along and I was involved in, like, coming up with a plan for it and designing it and everything, after it went live, that wasn't the end. I was still on supporting it, like along with my other colleagues and my other software engineers that we were working with on those projects. But it didn't mean that after the end and after we was deployed to production, migrations run and everything, that was it. And hand it off to the client and it's up to them. So I really enjoyed that part, that the continuous support and like bug fixes, improvements, and things like that. It was like an ongoing process. It was a journey that I went on with the customers.
Yeah.
I really like that part. I guess now, again, I haven't worked in a consultancy like where every like you said, like big consultancies like Infinity Works or Accenture or anything like that, where where you probably end up shifting projects very frequently. But I guess I guess it comes down to personal preference, doesn't it? Like if you enjoy the variety and the change, you get bored easily, because I know some people do.
Yeah.
Maybe that's for you. But
Yeah.
if you want maybe longevity and like if you get emotionally attached to some projects, then I guess that's a benefit that you can get from a smaller company, right?
Yeah, very true. I guess like you think you hit the nail on the head there. It really comes down to the individual's personal preference and drivers and how they work as an individual.
Yeah.
I suppose. And yeah, you definitely touched on a really good point there about wearing multiple hats, and I think that ties in nicely with the actual the podcast itself. Kind of
Yeah.
jumping into the kind of your thoughts, I guess. I mean, do you believe there's such thing as a full stack developer then, Anthony, as somebody who wears multiple hats in a business?
Yeah. I think so. Yeah. I mean, like I have been full stack for most of my career. I've I've had times where like maybe the particulars of a project or like the piece that we're working on at the moment is more back end focused or more front end focused. I've even been like when I was at the BBC, like I mentioned before, when we were working on voice technologies, that was all back end focused. There was obviously there's no UI when you're talking about voice,
Yeah.
but I was lucky enough because we worked on another project. Unfortunately, it didn't. It was released in beta, but it never got out of beta, and unfortunately, was discontinued at the BBC. It was BBC's own voice assistant called Beeb, but unfortunately, that got discontinued.
What was it called?
It was called Beeb.
Oh, Beeb.
Yeah, it was BBC's own voice assistant, and we entered in beta on only for Windows platforms. And the vision back then was that we would expand that to be available on mobile, but also to integrate with like iPlayer and to integrate with BBC Sounds and have like a voice assistant that you could use to search for content on all the other platforms. But unfortunately, it didn't make it to that stage. But while I was working on that project, I was involved in like working a little bit. There were periods of time, like a few months, we were working on building some bots for the back-end bots that would receive after we went through voice recognition to get the payload, like do whatever the bot needed to do, like fetch the weather forecast or fetch the news for the news updates and stuff like that, and then return that to the front end component. But then I guess I was lucky enough because after we got involved in building a UI for this voice assistant, that was like I said, only in beta on Windows machines.
Windows, yeah.
Yeah. So the UI was a beautiful. I mean, in my opinion, it was beautiful because I was involved in it. So I'm a bit, no, not objective on that, but it was a really interesting UI because there was, we had these things we called minims, like there were little dots that moved on the screen and created shapes. So when the idea for that was to kind of convey a message or like a feeling, basically, depending on what the user was doing on the screen at the time, or was how the user was interacting with the assistant. So when the user was asking for something, the assistant would take the UI would change shape and take the shape of sort of like an ear, and it would move with the input from the microphone, and they would kind of like pulsate according to the input from the microphone. And then when the assistant was responding, we would again like change the shape and respond as if it was like a speaker producing sound waves, and it was pulsating according to the output. Or then when the assistant was thinking, we had like a different sort of animation that was running. And when it was idle, we had like a different, like sort of like a raindrop kind of animation that was running. All of these things were like, it was a period of time for like about, I don't know, 4 or 5 months that I was very, very heavily focused on front end, and building those animations gave me like, like a new understanding of like, how complex these things could be. And like, I learned a lot of things from that experience. So I guess the short, I'm probably going a bit off topic here, but the point I was trying to make is that, I've had periods when I've had to focus on more back end or more front end things, but overall, I've always made sure, like, I've always covered everything back end and front end and all of my positions that I've been in, and I've been lucky enough to do that.
Nice. Yeah, just sorry. I was just going to say, in regards to podcasting, going off on tangents. That's what I think that's what they're here for, I guess.
Yeah.
This discussions and actually just talking about things, because there's naturally people out there who relate. They're like, wow, that was quite interesting to know about it. And again, you never know, it could spark motivation or an idea or creativity for somebody else. So
yeah,
I always think it's important, I guess.
Great.
So just on that, so Anthony, I guess, I mean, the benefits of being a full stack developer, because to me and an outside person, as somebody who works within the kind of tech recruitment scene, like a front end developer in Manchester still gets paid the same as a full stack developer, yet a full stack developer does more, in my opinion, and from an outside perspective. So what is the benefits of being like a full stack developer?
In my opinion, being a full stack developer, the benefit of being a full stack developer is that you can. I was thinking about this the other day, like when we started talking about this podcast, and now, like, I think my general feeling is that you are better. You can be a better developer if you are at least not only aware, but if you have knowledge of how the other systems operate and what it's like to be a developer for the other system. So like, if you want to say that, if you're working on a front end piece, for instance, it really benefits you to know what a back end piece what the back end counterpart looks like and how it operates, because that will make you design a better front end piece. And then vice versa. Like if you are working on a back end piece, it would really help to understand how the front end works, because it allows for better communications between those two things. So creating an interface that solves the problems that both parts need is a skill of its own, I think. So I think my main argument about being a full stack engineer is that having awareness of multiple systems, that whether that is, like design, whether that is, databases, integration, continuous integration or continuous deployment pipelines, infrastructure, or just plain old, APIs and how those communicate with each other, and what payloads are expected from the APIs. I think having that awareness of like all of the systems and multiple different things will make you a better developer on what you're working on, even if you're focusing on one particular thing. And I think additionally, like something that people probably don't even think about so much, is that one of the pros of being a full stack developer is that it probably makes you more attractive for job potential, doesn't it? Like,
Yeah.
But I guess, like generally speaking, anyone could fall into, like, there is this, there is a generalist specialist argument that you can find in any industry, any
Yeah.
domain, and we can go down that rabbit hole of, like, but I'm a specialist in this, and like, I guess it's a similar thing, like, what is the what is the it does it mean that your GP is a general practitioner and is aware of, all of your body's functions? Does that make them less of a scientist, or like lesser of a of a specialist than going to an eye doctor, or like a skin doctor, dermatologist? It's the same arguments could be applied to any industry. But I think that, yeah, just to reiterate what I said before, like, having that awareness, having that knowledge of all the other systems will make you better at what you're working on right now. Because you can design better systems, better communications, better architectures, um, and not only that, but like, I like working in teams that are multidisciplinary. I like working in places, like, again, that's personal preference, but like,
Yeah.
I like working in places where someone, like, I have worked in places where, for instance, this is like an example. I've worked in places where, for instance, a designer didn't know how to, like, wasn't really familiar with, like, CSS specific things, but they were more familiar with, creating images on Photoshop, and creating things on Figma potentially, or Zeppelin, like placing things in a certain way, creating wireframes, creating like a UX, but they weren't so much familiar with, like, okay, how does that translate to actual, CSS, like styling rules in coding language.
Yeah.
And I have worked in places where, like, the designer was very familiar with, was very much involved in, creating wireframes, creating the UX experience for, like, going through a certain path, but they were able to work with the developers and be like, okay,
Yeah.
no, if you tweak this animation value to like 0.25, and tweak this value to be like, tweak the padding here, like, they were able to give us more input in
Yeah.
how us developers could find the solution and finish the piece.
Yeah.
So
Wow,
like,
that's it. Yeah.
so I've enjoyed working in multidisciplinary teams where, like, we're all involved in it. Like, it's gonna sound weird, but like, we're all involved in each other's business pretty much.
Yeah.
Like, I liked working in teams where, like, a tester is not just someone that like, you throw the bag over the fence and then they pick it up and they try to test it. Like, I really enjoyed working in places where, like, the tester was involved in, like, a pairing or a mobbing session, and was giving us input on how we can approach writing a test for a certain problem, and what's a good test use case and what's a bad test use case. So I guess, by extension, I've really enjoyed working in teams where the developers are, again, multidisciplinary. They work on both front end and back end things, and they can give you input. And it's all about a point of view, isn't it? And like,
True.
what your experience so far has taught you, and how you can put that into how that will give you a different perspective on what you're working on. So any sort of different perspective is valuable, I think.
Yeah, yeah, you definitely touched on a few, some really good points there.
Mhm.
Like, especially like when it comes to hiring as well. Naturally, that's something that I have an invested interest in when you said that. But that's one of the problems that we have faced with hiring managers. Like, no, we don't
Mhm.
want a full stack developer. If he just doesn't want to do front end, I don't want to speak to him or
Okay.
her. So no, it's really interesting that you said that, and it is, I guess, the way you've been who's been mentoring you over the years,
Mhm.
like all of these little things have major influences, I guess. So
Mhm.
Anthony, from your perspective, like what do you think like a future developer looks like in your opinion? I know
Mhm.
Sabira thought there was going to be just a robot machine, but but she was only kidding. But what's your kind of viewpoint on a future developer?
There was a while when I thought that, yeah, it's gonna be a machine for sure. But and like, I had seen these things pop up a while ago about it. I remember there was this, I can't remember what the name of it was, but there was this like similar template engine, similar to like WordPress, if you want to imagine it. And but you would just give it the content somehow, and it would generate a page for you.
Yeah.
Like based on like, you know, it would already have like layouts already there for you and images, and those were like allegedly dynamically generated and were specific to your to your use case. But and I was like, oh wow, that's gonna put me out of a job pretty soon, isn't it? But I don't think that ever took off. So I don't know if it's gonna be a robot in the future, because there's so many things that are like, you know, technologies are changing every single day, right?
Yeah.
And like to touch on the previous, like to kind of like make a connection with a previous point, like there's so many new technologies that are coming out that are starting to blur the lines between front end and back end. Like
Hmm.
these, like with the coming up of like with new technologies like Next.js or Gatsby,
Yeah.
things like that. You can, you know, like you have the concept of running things server side versus client side is slightly getting blurred now. So like I do see a future where, like, you know, these things, like where like there won't be a distinction anymore between front end and back end. It will be like, oh, you're a software engineer, you're a developer, you can, you know, it's you can do anything pretty much, like, whether that's, you know, like React or it's JavaScript, it's Node, you know, like it's going to be like a blend, I think. The only difference might be like, you know, if you have styling knowledge or not.
Yeah.
To, like, you know, write your CSS or not write your CSS. But even that, I think, is gonna, like, you know, we've gone there. There are so many like different frameworks of how you can write your styles and things like that. So I do think that's going to be, like, you know, part of this blend that's coming up. I think
Yeah.
is going to be to include styles as well and everything.
Hmm. I just whilst you actually you said that, I was just thinking, on whenever I jump on YouTube or like I want to watch something, I
Mhm.
usually, when an advert pops up, there was one, I think it was for like a company called Bubble, or like a tech called Bubble, and I
Mhm.
think it was like a no code platform or something like that. And I thought to myself, wow, well, is this like the new kind of way of like creating software or whatever? But is that kind of what you were kind of talking about there, like a no code platform? Or
Potentially, yeah. I don't know how this. I haven't seen this, so I don't know like what how this bubble looks like,
there,
to be honest.
yeah, I think there's a few like Airtable and stuff, and essentially it's like the way they advertise it is like, oh, you don't need to like create multiple thousands of line of code, just do use this kind of drag and drop and it'll do it all for you kind of.
Oh, okay, I get it. But
So
that sounds like it's very similar to, like, in like what WordPress does. Like you don't have to worry about coding, right? You just put drag and drop
drag and yeah.
elements, and it will create a blog post or a page. You can change the page layout for you, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
But naturally, whenever I seen that, because of my knowledge, it is naturally going to be limited compared to people like yourself. But in my head, I thought, wow, is this like the future of like what software looks like? But
Mhm.
probably a conversation for another time,
Yeah, probably.
for sure. But no, interesting, strong insight. So, Anthony, from your perspective, then, after obviously having so many years of experience in the industry, what advice would you give a young Anthony, if he was to start out his software journey all over again?
Um, I would say, no, okay. I get. I don't want to deviate too much, but like it's. I when I finished university, so like I studied in I did my undergrad in Greece, and I
Yeah.
came to the UK to do my master's, and I actually did a master's in business. But anyway, I got into web development after that. But
Mm.
when I finished and I graduated from my undergrad in Greece, I vowed never to become a developer.
All right.
I took a promise. I said I promised myself, like, I'm never become a developer, a programmer. I said back then. I think it had to do with the way that I was taught and the languages I was taught. I didn't find them interesting at all. Like
Yeah.
I was taught Java and C++. plus plus.
Hmm.
C++ plus plus was a bit more interesting, but Java I found like I didn't like it at all, and I couldn't see the use of, like, what's the purpose of me, you know, like writing this code and then having to compile it? How do I share with anyone that wants to see it? Like I found barriers, and like, man, the way that the things that I was taught, I guess, is probably a good description of it.
Yeah.
But then I discovered web, and my whole perception changed. Like it really turned my world upside down because I was studying. I was doing like a. It wasn't an MBA. I was doing a business degree basically, and I wanted to like shift and go into that. But then like one of the modules in my business degree was like just JavaScript, CSS, and just web HTML programming pretty much. And that kind of like I had never been taught JavaScript before that. I had never been taught, sorry, well, I knew some basic JavaScript stuff, but I had never been taught the whole thing of, writing in a notepad, just a little bit of HTML, pulling in some CSS and putting some JavaScript that can run in any browser, would create your web page. For some reason, like that was sort of new to me back then.
Yeah.
And that really turned my world upside down. So I guess my advice to my younger self was like, don't dismiss things from the get-go. Like there are other things out there that you're not aware of. So
Hmm.
my advice would be to my younger self, like, programming is not just Java. There's all of these other things out there in the world, and the more, like the older I get, like the more I discover new things that I wasn't aware of before, or new things that are coming up. And like it's this constant discovery that is, my younger self was um quite scared of, I guess. But
Yeah.
my older self is like, I find the beauty in it as well. That like this is a constantly evolving um world, I guess, that we
Yeah.
live, us programmers live in. So many new technologies coming up, and like like from within a span of 6 months, what you're doing might be out of date, right?
Yeah.
So it's you have to look at it from like the bright side and like take in the good things, that this is going to be a journey of self-discovery and discovery of new things, and like learning new things constantly, and that could be a wonderful thing.
Hmm.
So I
So,
guess, yeah, my advice to my younger self is like, don't be afraid of the discovery and the learning process of learning new things. Just embrace it.
yeah. So just on that, that's quite interesting. So whenever you mention like the older you've got, the more you've learned. Is this like the more you've learned about things like, wow, like how did I not know that? Or are they more like new things, I guess, like coming through, or a bit of both, I suppose?
I guess a bit of both, yeah. Like how did I not know about Kubernetes before, but now I am learning about it.
Yeah.
I didn't know about Docker and all that, but like I had never actually worked. I knew about Kubernetes, but like I'd never worked with Kubernetes until like my current position. So I guess my thing was, oh wow, there's so many pros to this. Like there's so many things you can do with this. But it's also, discovering new things and new technologies. Like I've been what's the one thing that we've been working with this, like when I discovered lambdas, cloud functions
Yeah.
on AWS, that really blew my mind. Like, wow, that's like no need for servers, like serverless technologies. That completely blew my mind. Like no need for like deployments, setting up connections to databases, and like replicas and all of that. Like all of like those cloud functions and serverless technologies, like that completely blew my mind. And like that is definitely the future.
Yeah.
And something that, if anyone isn't up to speed with that, I doubt that there is anyone that is not aware of those things. But like that is definitely the way that we should be
Mhm.
architecting our systems. But
Yeah.
yeah, that was one of the things I was like, that completely fascinated me.
Yeah. Well, and I appreciate. Yeah, we're probably slightly going off topic as well here, but this is just me having my natural curiosity in your industry, and I think, yeah,
Yeah,
that's probably important within your industry to have a natural curiosity to challenge things and whatnot. But
definitely.
I've noticed a lot more like things that have become more and more important are soft skills. Like what kind of
Hmm.
maybe two or three soft skills would you say is important to find within maybe a junior developer, like if they kind of feel they need to focus on like some softer skills, what do you think is going to be like most valuable for them?
Hmm. Um, I first of all, yeah, I completely agree with you that, soft skills is something that is generally might be like undervalued or neglected
Yeah.
at early stages, like, during interviews and whatever. You might just think, you know, just looking at CVs, for instance, those are the one thing you don't really notice are the soft skills, right?
True.
And it's nothing that you can take an accreditation for.
Yeah.
um, but yeah, I guess the one thing that I look like when I've been lucky enough that I've been involved in the recruitment process, both at my previous position at the BBC and my current position where I'm at TruePill, where I'm working at now. Um, the one thing I look for in candidates is just generally how comfortable they are in just talking casually. So,
Hmm.
like, making sure you have like good communication skills, um and so I guess the top thing is how approachable you are, how friendly you are. So like that's my number one. And my number two is how you how you how easy it is for you to explain what you're working on. So for me, a big part of being a software engineer, especially an experienced one, is about mentoring younger people.
Hmm.
So when I conduct interviews with candidates, I want to see, and I when we do a tech test, like I ask them to like, just be very vocal and talk us through their thinking and explain what it is they're doing and everything, because I want to see how they approach, first of all how they approach solving a problem, but secondly how good they are at communicating what they're thinking, so that they could explain that to someone who is less experienced than them, and um like share knowledge with anyone else that's working with them.
Hmm.
So I guess those are the two things that I value the most, like sharing knowledge and how eloquent they are at, like explaining their thought process. And
Yeah.
second, approachable. We want to create an environment where anyone is, first of all, is free to share their thoughts and share their knowledge and speak up and share their mind, but also um, an environment where we can all learn things from each other and
Hmm.
pair and mob on certain pieces if it's applicable, and just that kind of give and take working situation. I hope that makes sense. What
Yeah,
I'm
no,
saying.
for sure.
Yeah.
I think especially when it comes to soft skills as well, though, there's so many there's so many little things. I guess it is hard to put a finger on one thing because you're like, well,
Mm,
that is obviously important, and like you mentioned there, that's one thing that I've started mentioning to hiring managers, like how well this individual articulates and breaks down their
exactly.
project. Because if they can explain it to me, who hasn't really got too much of an idea about what they're talking about, to some degree, if they can explain it to me and I understand it, imagine what they could do in your environment. So
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I completely agree with you on that one. Yeah.
I think that's a really good point. Well, listen, Anthony. Obviously, really, really cool discussion there. Definitely ran over the time. It's probably because I was asking you loads of questions out of my curiosity. But thank you very much, honestly, for your contribution. If any of you listeners have any further questions for Anthony, want to pick his brain on a few things, or just want to find out a little bit more about TruePill and what they're doing, I'll tag him obviously in the comments below as well. And again, thanks for listening to this episode of the Trusted Tech Talks podcast with me, Jordan, and this episode's guest, Anthony. If you still have any questions around full stack development, obviously get in touch with ourselves. Anthony, drop us a message on LinkedIn as well. But yeah, please don't make sure you miss out on our future episodes. Follow us on LinkedIn and Spotify. And thanks again, Anthony. Have a great evening.
Thank you very much, Jordan.